Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyaus Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
We will sing O Faceless Lips on page 24.
Smile Good morning. The reading I have for you is from this book. It's called Reminiscences of Swami Vivekananda. And the reminiscence I'm going to give you is from a woman named Cornelia Conger. And Cornelia lived at the house where the Swami stayed during his time in Chicago in 1893 for the Parliament of Religions. And he actually stayed for several weeks at this house. And she was 6 years old at the time. And so her reminiscence was written down 62 years later. So this is actually an edited version, which I just put together for time to edit it a little bit. So let me see if I can see it. That'd be good. To facilitate boarding of delegates prior to the Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893, local church members volunteered to host delegates into their homes. My grandmother, Mrs. John B. Lyon, was one of these volunteers, requesting that a delegate who was broad-minded be sent to us. I was 6 years old at the time, and I was living with my grandparents. Our house was at 262 Michigan Avenue, a pleasant, somewhat old-fashioned frame house painted olive green with boxes of red geraniums across the front. The house was full of guests all that summer, as my grandparents were naturally hospitable. All of our out-of-town relatives and friends were eager to come to Chicago because the World's Fair was a very exciting and fascinating local and current event. The house was so crowded that my grandmother had to send her eldest son to a friend's house to have room for our guest. We had been given no idea who our guest would be, nor even what religion he was representing. Word came to us that our delegate was to arrive after midnight one evening, escorted by a church member. Everyone went to bed except my grandmother, who waited up to receive them. When she answered the door, there stood Swami Vivekananda in a long yellow robe, a red sash, and red turban, a very startling sight to my grandmother because she had never seen an East Indian before. She welcomed him warmly and showed him to his room. My memories of the Swami are simply as a guest in our home, whose great personality is still vivid to me. He had brilliant eyes, a charming voice, with the lilt of a well-bred Irish brogue and a warm smile. He told me enchanting stories of India, of monkeys and peacocks, flights of bright green parrots, of banyan trees, masses of flowers, and markets piled with all varieties of fruits and vegetables. To me, they sounded like fairy tales, but now that I have been to India and traveled there broadly, I realized that he was simply describing scenes from his own boyhood. I used to rush to him when he came into the house. I would cry, "Tell me another story, Swami," and I would climb into his lap. Perhaps being so far from home in a strange country, he found comfort in the love and enthusiasm of a young child. I was fascinated by his turban. It struck me as a very strange hat, especially as it had to be wound up afresh every time he put it on. I persuaded him to allow me to see him wrap it back and forth around his head. Our American food is less highly seasoned than Indian food, and my grandmother was afraid that the Swami would find our food flat and boring. The Swami told us that he was to conform to the customs and foods of his hosts, so he ate as we did. My grandmother used to make a ceremony of making salad dressing at the table, and one of the condiments she used was Tabasco sauce. She once handed him a bottle of Tabasco sauce and said, "Swami, you might like a drop or two of this on your meat." He poured it on with such a lavish hand that we all gasped and said, "You can't do that, Swami. It's terribly hot." But the Swami loved it. He laughed and ate with such enjoyment that a bottle of Tabasco sauce was always kept at his place after that. When the Swami began to give lectures, people gave him money to put towards the work he hoped to do for India. He had no purse, so he would tie up the money in a handkerchief. He brought the handkerchief home and presented it to everyone like a proud little boy. He would pour the money into my grandmother's lap and ask her to keep it for him. She made him learn the different coins and had him stack them accordingly. She made him write down the amount each time, then he would deposit the money. She would deposit the money in her bank for him. My grandfather used to tease the Swami about his slight Irish brogue. The Swami said the accent was probably adopted from his favorite professor, who happened to be of Irish descent. My grandfather had a great fondness for the Swami. There was some consideration whether some of the guests staying at our house would have an issue with a dark-skinned visitor. My grandfather declared, "I don't care a bit if all of our other guests leave. The Swami is the most brilliant and interesting man who has ever been in our home, and he shall stay as long as he wishes." My grandfather was flattered and embarrassed one day when the Swami remarked calmly in my grandfather's presence, "Mr. Lyon is the most Christ-like man I have ever met." I asked my Aunt Catherine if she could contribute anything to my scattered memories. Catherine was a young woman at the time of Swami's visit, and her social group included young intellectuals and professors. She recalls that she mentioned to her friends how remarkable the Swami was. Her friends replied that modern scientists and psychologists could show up the Swami's religious beliefs in no time. Catherine persuaded the Swami to meet her friends. They met at an informal dinner party. My aunt does not recall the details of the discussions that followed. She just recalls that the Swami's knowledge of religion, science, and psychology were astounding. Before the evening was over, the young intellectuals admitted defeat. They parted ways with warm admiration and affection. Seeing it now, I feel that my recollections of the Swami are too childish and trivial to have been put in writing. I am humbled and apologetic for having taken anyone's time, but these are my memories of Swami Vivekananda, who I have loved all these 62 years. I remember him not as a teacher or religious leader, but as a wonderful and vivid friend who lived in our home.
Good morning. This is from the Discourses of Meher Baba, which he gave to small groups of his followers between the 1930s and 1940s. This is from a series called Qualifications of the Aspirant, an excerpt from some divine qualities. Spiritual effort demands not only physical endurance and courage, but also unshrinking forbearance and unassailable moral courage. The world is caught up in Maya and is addicted to false values. Therefore, the ways of the world run counter to the standards which the aspirant has set for himself. If he runs away from the world, that does not help him. He will again have to come back to the world and develop that quality which would enable him to face and accept the world as it is. Very often his path lies through the world which he has to serve in spite of not liking its ways. If the aspirant is to love and serve the world which does not understand him or even is intolerant towards him, he must develop infinite forbearance. As the aspirant advances on the path, he acquires, through his contact with the Master, an increasingly deeper understanding of true love. This makes him painfully sensitive to those impacts from outside, which not only do not taste of love, but actually bring him into contact with cold contempt, cynical callousness, agonizing apathy, and unabating hatred. All these impacts try his forbearance to the utmost. Even the worldly man suffers in the world, which he occasionally finds indifferent or hostile, but he is thick-skinned and his suffering is less acute. He does not expect anything much better from human nature and thinks that these things are inevitable and incurable. The aspirant, who has tasted of a deeper love, knows the hidden possibilities in every soul, and his suffering is acute because he feels the gulf between that which is and that which might have been, if only the world had even faintly appreciated the love which he has begun to understand and cherish. The task of forbearance would be easy if the aspirant could have become reconciled to the ways of the world and accept them without challenge. Having seen the higher, however, it becomes his imperative duty to stand by it even if the whole world opposes him. Loyalty to the higher truth of his own perception demands unshakable moral courage and readiness to face the criticism, scorn, and even hatred of those who have not yet begun to open out to the truth. Although in this uneven struggle he does get an unfailing help from the master and other co-aspirants, he has to develop the capacity to fight for the truth single-handed without relying upon external help all the time. This supreme moral courage can only come with supreme confidence in oneself and the master. To love the world and serve it in the ways of the masters is no game for the weak and faint-hearted. Moral courage and self-confidence should be accompanied by freedom from worry. There are very few things in the mind which eat up as much energy as worry. It is one of the most difficult things not to worry about anything. Worry is experienced when things go wrong, but in relation to past happenings, it is idle merely to wish that they might have been otherwise. The frozen past is what it is, and no amount of worrying is going to make it any other than what it has been. But the limited ego mind identifies itself with its past, gets entangled with it, and keeps alive the pangs of frustrated desires. Thus, worry continues to grow into the mental life of man until the ego mind is burdened by the past. Worry is also experienced in relation to the future, when this future is expected to be disagreeable in some way. In this case, it seeks to justify itself as a necessary part of the attempt to prepare for coping with the anticipated situations. But things can never be helped merely by worrying. Besides, many of the things which are anticipated never turn up. Or if they do occur, they turn out to be much more acceptable than they were expected to be. Worry is the product of feverish imagination working under the stimulus of desires. It is a living through of sufferings which are mostly of our own creation. Worry has never done anyone any good, and it is much worse than the mere dissipation of psychic energy, for it substantially curtails the joy and fullness of life. Among the many things which the aspirant needs to cultivate, there are few which are as important as cheerfulness, enthusiasm, and equipoise. And these are rendered impossible unless he succeeds in cutting out worry from his life. When the mind is gloomy, depressed, or disturbed, its action is chaotic and binding. Hence arises the supreme need to maintain cheerfulness, enthusiasm, and equipoise under all circumstances. All these are rendered impossible unless the aspirant succeeds in cutting out worry from his life. Worry is a necessary resultant of attachment to the past or to the anticipated future, and it always persists in some form or other until the mind is completely detached from everything. The difficulties of the path can be overcome only if the aspirant has one-pointedness. If his psychic energies are dissipated in worldly pursuits, the progress he makes is very slow. One-pointedness implies dispassion concerning all the allurements of the phenomenal world. The mind must turn away from all temptations and complete control be established over the senses. Hence, control and dispassion are both necessary to attain one-pointedness in the search for true understanding. The supreme condition for sure and steady progress on the path is the benefit of guidance from the Master. The Master gives us that guidance and help which is necessary according to the immediate needs of the aspirant. All the Master expects is that the aspirant will try his best for spiritual advancement. He does not expect immediate transformation of consciousness, except where the ground is previously ready. Time is an important factor in spiritual development, as it is in all material endeavors. When the Master has given a spiritual push to the aspirant, he waits till the help thus given is completely assimilated by him. An overdose of spirituality always has an unhealthy reaction, particularly when it is inopportune. The Master, therefore, carefully selects the moment when his intervention is assured of maximum results. And having intervened, he waits with infinite patience till the aspirant really needs further help.
Ranjani Niranjani Ranjani Niranjani Ratna Kanchuka Bharana Bhushani Tali 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 Ranjani Niranjani Panchabanari Prema Priya Sakhi 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 Pranavakara Panchara Sthita Shukhi Panchabanari Prema Priya Sakhi Pranavakara Panchara Sthita Shukhi Panchabanari Prema Priya Sakhi Pranavakara शुकी पंचवाणारी प्रेम प्रिय सखी प्रणवाकार पंजर स्थित शुकी मगसा रे ग मद सा नि द नि द मगसा Gamagasa, Rigamada ni the Magasa, Rigamada Rigamagasa ni the Magasa, the Magasa, ni the Magasa, Rigamada Rigamagasa ni the Magasa, Rigamada Rigamagada, Magasa ni the Magamada ni the Magasa, Rigamada Rigamagada, Magasa ni the Sani the Magaranjani, Niranjani. रत्न कंजू कावरण भूषणी निरंजनी निरंजनी कंचदल लोचनी कामाक्षी कंचदल लोचनी कामाक्षी कंचदल लोचनी कामाक्षी करुणा रसयुत चारु कटाक्षी कंजदल लोचनी कामाक्षी करुणा रसयुत चारु कटाक्षी कंजदल लोचनी कामाक्षी करुणा रसयुत चारु कटाक्षी संचित पाप ओ कोटि संचित पाप ओ कोटि संचित पाप कोटि संचित पाप कोटि संचन मुदीर्चि सदा प्रोमो संचित पाप कोटि संचन मुदीर्चि सदा प्रोमो Magasa, Rigamada Sani the Magasa, Rigamada Sani the Magasa, Rigamada Sani the Magasa, Rigamada Sarigamagasa ni the Magasa, the Magasa, ni the Magasa, Rigamada Sarigamagasa ni the Magasa, Rigamada Sarigamagada, Magasa ni the Magamada ni the Magasa, Rigamada Sarigamagada, Magasa ni the Sani the Magaranjani. निरंजनी रत्न कंजू कावरण भूषणी निरंजनी निरंजनी
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma amritam gamaya avirāvirmayeti rudrayatte dakshinam mukham tenamam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. I'd like to share with you today a story that a friend sent me a few days ago, which I found very, very meaningful, very significant. So the story is titled The Girl with the Apples. So it's a true story of a survival from the Holocaust and the mysterious ways of God that drew people here together in America after their lives had touched in the dark days of Hitler. So this was in August of 1942 in Piotrków, Poland. The sky was gloomy that morning as we waited anxiously. All the men, women, and children of Piotrkow's Jewish ghetto had been herded into a square. Word had gotten around that we were being moved. My father had only recently died from typhus, which had run rampant through the crowded ghetto. My greatest fear was that our family would be separated. Whatever you do, Isidore, my elder brother, whispered to me, don't tell them your age. Say you're 16. I was tall for a boy of 11, so I could pull it off. That way, I might be deemed valuable as a worker. An SS man approached me, boots clicking against the cobblestones. He looked me up and down and then asked my age. 16, I said. He directed me to the left, where my 3 brothers and other healthy young men already stood. My mother was motioned to the right with the other women, children, sick and elderly people. I whispered to Isidore, why? He didn't answer. I ran to Mama's side and said I wanted to stay with her. No, she said sternly. Get away. Don't be a nuisance. Go with your brothers. She had never spoken so harshly before, but I understood. She was protecting me. She loved me so much that just this once she pretended not to. It was the last I ever saw of her. My brothers and I were transported in a cattle car to Germany. We arrived at the Buchenwald concentration camp one night later and were led into a crowded barrack. The next day, we were issued uniforms and identification numbers. Don't call me Herman anymore, I said to my brothers. Call me 94983. I was put to work in the camp's crematorium, loading the dead into a hand-cranked elevator. I too felt dead. Hardened, I had become a number. Soon my brothers and I were sent to Schlieben, one of Buchenwald's sub-camps near Berlin. One morning I thought I heard my mother's voice. Son, she said softly but clearly, I'm going to send you an angel. Then I woke up. Just a dream. A beautiful dream. But in this place, there could be no angels. There was only work and hunger and fear. A couple of days later, I was walking around the camp, around the barracks, near the barbed wire fence where the guards could not easily see. I was alone. On the other side of the fence, I spotted someone. A little girl with light, almost luminous curls. She was half hidden behind a birch tree. I glanced around to make sure no one saw me. I called to her softly in German, "Do you have something to eat?" She didn't understand. I inched closer to the fence and repeated the question in Polish. She stepped forward. I was thin and gaunt, with rags wrapped around my feet, but the girl looked unafraid. In her eyes, I saw life. She pulled an apple from her woolen jacket and threw it over the fence. I grabbed the fruit, and as I started to run away, I heard her say faintly, "I'll see you tomorrow." I returned to the same spot by the fence at the same time every day. She was always there with something for me to eat, a hunk of bread, or better yet, an apple. We didn't dare speak or linger. To be caught would mean death for us both. I didn't know anything about her, just a kind farm girl, except that she understood Polish. What was her name? Why was she risking her life for me? Hope was in such short supply that this girl on the other side of the fence gave me some, as nourishing in its way as the bread and apples. Nearly 7 months later, my brothers and I were crammed into a coal car and shipped to Theresienstadt camp in Czechoslovakia. "Don't return," I told the girl that day. "We are leaving." I turned toward the barracks and didn't look back. Didn't even say goodbye to the little girl whose name I'd never learned, the girl with the apples. We were in Theresienstadt for 3 months. The war was winding down, and Allied forces were closing in, yet my fate seemed sealed. On May 10th, 1945, I was scheduled to die in the gas chamber at 10 a.m. In the quiet of dawn, I tried to prepare myself. So many times death seemed ready to claim me, but somehow I'd survived. Now it was over. I thought of my parents. At least I thought we will be reunited. But at 8 a.m., there was a commotion. I heard shouts and saw people running every which way through camp. I caught up with my brothers. Russian troops had liberated the camp. The gates swung open. Everyone was running, so I did too. Amazingly, all of my brothers had survived. I'm not sure how. But I knew that the girl with the apples had been the key to my survival. In a place where evil seemed triumphant, one person's goodness had saved my life, had given me hope in a place where there was none. My mother had promised to send me an angel, and the angel had come. Eventually, I made my way to England, where I was sponsored by a Jewish charity, put up in a hostel with other boys who had survived the Holocaust, and trained in electronics. Then I came to America, where my brothers Sam had already moved. I served in the US Army during the Korean War and returned to New York City after 2 years. By August 1957, I'd opened my own electronics repair shop. I was starting to settle in. One day, my friend Sid, who I knew from England, called me. "I've got a date. She's got a Polish friend. Let's double date." A blind date? Nah, that wasn't for me. But Sid kept pestering me, and a few days later, we headed up to the Bronx to pick up his date and her friend Roma. I had to admit, for a blind date, this wasn't so bad. Roma was a nurse at a Bronx hospital. She was kind and smart, beautiful too, with swirling brown curls and green, almond-shaped eyes that sparkled with life. The four of us drove out to Coney Island. Roma was easy to talk to, easy to be with. Turned out she was wary of blind dates too. We were both just doing our friends a favor. We took a stroll on the boardwalk, enjoying the salty Atlantic breeze, and then had dinner by the shore. I couldn't remember having a better time. We piled back into Sid's car, Roma and I sharing the back seat. As European Jews who had survived the war, we were aware that much had been left unsaid between us. She broached the subject. Where were you, she asked softly, during the war? The camps, I said. The terrible memory still vivid, the irreparable loss. I had tried to forget, but you can never forget. She nodded. My family was hiding on a farm in Germany, not far from Berlin, she told me. My father knew a priest, and he got us Aryan papers. I imagine how she must have suffered too. Fear, a constant companion. And yet, here we were, both survivors in a new world. There was a camp next to the farm, Roma continued. I saw a boy there, and I would throw him apples every day. What an amazing coincidence that she had helped some other boy. What did he look like? I asked. He was tall, skinny, and hungry. I must have seen him every day for 6 months. My heart was racing. I couldn't believe it. This couldn't be. Did he tell you one day not to come back because he was leaving Schlieffen? Roma looked at me in amazement. Yes. That was me. I was ready to burst with joy and awe, flooded with emotions. I couldn't believe it. My angel. I'm not letting you go, I said to Roma. And in the back of the car on that blind date, I proposed to her. I didn't want to wait. You are crazy, she said. But she invited me to meet her parents for Shabbat dinner the following week. There was so much I looked forward to learning about Roma, but the most important things I always knew: her steadfastness, her goodness. For many months, in the worst of circumstances, she had come to the fence and given me hope. Now that I had found her again, I could never let her go. That day, she said yes, and I kept my word. After nearly 50 years of marriage, 2 children and 3 grandchildren, I have never let her go. So the author of this is Herman Rosenblatt. He presently lives in Miami Beach. And this story we hear is being made into a movie, probably called The Fence. So look forward to that movie. Remarkable and moving as this story is, what it also shows that it's easy to get cynical in the kind of times in which we live. But it's good to know that miracles are possible. Miracles are not something that we just read about in books. It's not something that it can happen today. And the second thing that struck me was about the dream he had of his mother, saying that, I'm going to send you an angel. Now, we might have our own ideas about what angels are, how they how they are. But all angels don't have to come with wings, flying and filled with light. So even as we go about our day-to-day activities, no matter how dull or boring or uneventful our life may be, we never know that every person we meet in life could be a potential angel in our lives, unbeknownst to us. Angels have a way of appearing in our life in most unexpected ways at unexpected times. And we never know. So if we remember that there may be an angel for us among the people we move with every day, or from among the strangers we might meet on some chance meeting, the way we relate to other people in life, whether we know them or not, that love, respect would naturally come if we recognize that every person we see is a potential angel. And unbeknownst to us, we might be an angel to someone else too. And we don't even have to be aware of it. It's possible to be an angel, an unconscious angel, in our own little ways. So that's what makes this story so powerful, that the presence of angels in our midst, even in the 21st century, even with all the social, political upheavals we see around, that there are these angels in our midst. And if we only keep our hearts open, our minds open, we might be able to recognize the power of God working in mysterious ways in our own lives. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.
মাঝে করিছেন উদ্ধার আমি ভুলেও থাকি তবুও দেখি ভুলেও থাকি তবুও দেখি ভোলেন আমায় একটি বার মাঝে আর আমি আছি ভাবনা কি আর আছে আমার মাঝে আর আমি আছি এমন স্নেহের আধার কে আছে আর মাঝে আমার আমি মার এমন স্নেহের আধার কে আছে আর মাঝে আমার আমি মার বড় স্নেহের আধার মাঝে আমার স্নেহের আধার মাঝে আমার আমি মায়ের মামার মাঝে আর আমি আছি ভাবনা কি আর আছে আমার মাঝে আর আমি আছি
For the satsang next Sunday, our subject will be inner wandering. On Wednesday, we'll continue with the study of Swamiji's talks at the Chicago Parliament. And on Tuesday and Saturday, our meditation will also continue as usual. Now let's do the prayer on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
We'll sing Sarvamangala on page 5.
Jai.